Bill Healy from Printing Industries. One of the great frustrations about this debate is that we had a lunch yesterday where we talked about 1.2 million businesses in Australia being small businesses. And the realities are, if we're going to get innovation, productivity growth in Australia, it's not going to be global, the existing global companies. It's going to be through the generation of innovation and growth through small operators. And you'd know, Roy, from the manufacturing report, I think there was something like 65 to 70% of the businesses surveyed said that they were very comfortable in their current environment and didn't see a need to grow. There's also major problems with succession planning. So if you look, and if you look at the realities of the world in terms of the great global companies, they're primarily first-generation companies. Even the Australian global companies, Westfield, Rip Curl, the like. So I'm interested to know, how do we shift this focus back into small operators? Because at the end of the day, if we are going to turn around the productivity debate, it has to be done at the level of the small business. And we know that small business has enormous problems looking above the day-to-day realities of, paying their bills. And looking outside the P&L, well, it's not really a P&L for them, it's keeping their house.
So, Peter, start with you.
All right. From my perspective, I guess the great focus is going to be on digitisation. I did notice it was on the PwC slide. I don't know whether anyone else did in the 5 factors in there. And it's particularly relevant to small business. Big business can buy anything that needs to be digitised. It can buy teleco delivery systems, and it can buy access to software in the cloud, and it can buy everything it needs in that. But small business doesn't have the ability to adapt readily to technological shift. And if there's one angle, I think, of the things that government's involved in that could be inherently a very powerful support mechanism to increase productivity at small business level, it's that ability to take advantage of digitisation, because it's going to come anyway. And that message, Peter Strong from COSBOA, probably know people here, he and I had discussions a couple of years ago about the nature of change that's going to come here, and he runs a bookshop, I think. He sells books. Now, there's a big threat to him, Amazon, digitisation, that kind of thing. His view basically is you're going to have to take this on, because denial and avoidance leads you to oblivion. And it's in my adjustment slide there, what was going on in investment in manufacturing. We are guessing a little bit, because it's quite hard to be able to separate the strands, but it's adjust or exit. And so you will have to invest in this area. And that idea of government getting out of the way of adaptation to technology. And government does get in the way. I mean, there are taxation system issues, and there are regulatory changes, and there are service delivery standards, and there's a whole bunch of things. But, if you stepped aside and said digitisation is coming, and if it can be digitised, it will be. If it can be, it will be. You go to the airport now, you check in yourself, right? You go to the supermarket, increasingly, you check out yourself. This is, if it can be digitised, it will be digitised. That's an important aspect of this to me. Anyway, I did see it in your slide, and I was impressed with that.
And this is many people in this room have a big stake in SMEs. I mean, what's your response to the question?
Well, I'd go even further than Peter. I guess it's a mindset issue as well as about digitisation, the bandwidth of the mind as well as the cable. And if smaller businesses are not going to make a shift into a new economy, competitive pressures will sweep them away. A good example of how this shift is going to take place I see in our students who are interested in setting up their own businesses. We have one 25-year-old who was determined to move into a digital space but to develop a disruptive business model. So he set up a textbook rental service. It's a company called Zucal. And you may have seen in the newspapers, the commercial publishers are now getting very agitated by this. He's buying books off them and then renting them out. And, there couldn't be anything more disruptive to their business model if people are going to rent books as opposed to buy them. and ultimately they'll appear on iPads. But he's got the structure now. He went over to Silicon Valley. He got his venture capital through various channels that we found for him, and he's the future of this country. He and his little team of 25 to 26-year-olds are going to change a small area of the marketplace and identify new market segments. But if one sees this happening right across the economy, a lot of traditional businesses are going to find themselves in trouble, and that's where the mindset change has to take place. That's where this productivity leadership campaign is just so important, and where ACCI's role in providing the information and the guidance and the inspiration for these changes is going to be very important. For those businesses that are operating in a domestic economy context, perhaps the pressure is not going to be quite as great, but for certainly those exposed to international competition, they're going to face big challenges.
Thanks. Another question.
Rick Carney from the Chamber of Commerce in South Australia. Just following on from you, Roy, I'd be interested in particularly your comments, but anybody's comments around having entrepreneurship put into curriculums in schools. Something we're promoting in South Australia with the South Australian government is that if you go back to our generation when we were growing up, we were told, get a good education, get a good job. The mindset now, I've got teenage children, and I'm saying get a good education, but then go out and start your own business. And I'm seeing that more and more in this generation, like you said, 25-year-old. But I think we've got to start earlier than the universities. I think we've got to get entrepreneurship into school curriculum. Just interested in your comments.
Brad.
What was the closing address at Harvard? I can't remember which Oracle executive was giving it, but he said, if you're here as a graduate level, I've already given up on you. If you're halfway through your undergrad, there's probably still hope. Get out now. So I certainly think it's important. I wonder if it's one of those things that's necessary but not sufficient. I took courses in entrepreneurship. I do wonder to the extent that you can actually teach that. Roy would have a better view on that than me. But I also wonder about the infrastructure when these people are graduating. I want to pick up a comment that you made earlier around the importance of venture capital. And actually, again, this is anecdotal. I can't prove this. This is just something I read. It says actually our venture capital industry here is much less developed than it would be in other markets. And so if you're going to have these people going out and starting up their own businesses, which is absolutely fantastic and necessary, how do they get access to the capital to actually fund those, other than living with their parents for the first 10 years of their career, to actually develop these things and market them and distribute them?
We're getting close to time. Peter, you want to make a comment?
No.
We're getting close to time, so I need to kind of wrap it up. Charles Handy said that hope is not a method. We can put up all the data we want and hope it'll change the planet, and we know that it won't. And equally, so I'm going to mangle somebody else's quote, which is, bad things happen when good individuals stand there and do nothing. If the only force for change is in this room, if this is where it started, because we wait for somebody else, it won't happen. What's your counsel for these fine folk? What would you ask for them to do, to be? Not just what somebody else, some government, somebody else. What would your advice be?
Well, I think the key is entrepreneurial thinking. It was mentioned a moment ago. It's certainly another generation coming through. Just to perhaps continue the discussion we were having about entrepreneurship, one of the students, when I first arrived at UTS, approached me, one of our scholarship winners, and said, look, I'm 19 years old. I've just started my third business. I don't think I can cope with the course. You'll have to give me a deferment of the scholarship. I thought, well, that's unusual. Surely the Bachelor of Business is helping you with skills to develop your business. No, it only gets in the way, she said. You train people who dream of working for large corporations, not for people like me. Now, she's now gone on to become New South Wales Young Entrepreneur of the Year. She's gone to the US to get venture capital from via a Y Combinator. Now, why we can't generate venture capital here is another question as well beyond the scope of this discussion, but we have 1.4 trillion knocking around in managed funds. Surely we have the wherewithal to redirect some of that, even despite the level of risk, into our entrepreneurial ventures. So I think, in terms of getting back to your point, Colin, the issue is how do we develop an entrepreneurial mindset, not just among our current generation, but among the generation coming through, well, especially the generation coming through, and how can an organisation like ACCI work with universities and educational institutions to encourage that approach, because it can't just be learnt through the curriculum, it has to be experienced. What a lot of universities and business schools are doing around the world is setting up what they call living labs. The D School in Stanford, MIT Design Lab, Aalto University in Helsinki with its design factory. We're trying to do the same at UTS. Some other universities are doing it as well. Very small scale at this stage, but out of that is coming potentially huge value, huge wealth for the country generated by students. But students need you guys. They need established businesses, established entrepreneurs to work with them and give them the guidance they need.
Thank you. Brad?
I guess the practical level, and from a management standpoint, what I'd be doing is, if we look at the really innovative companies, and there are some big ones that are actually, I mean, GE is a very innovative company. 3M tracks their revenues from products they've developed in the last 5 years. That's what they look for, because they know that's what they need to do. But just in that vein, I guess from a corporate or from a company perspective, dedicating a certain percentage of my revenues every year, saying this is going to go to the crazy ideas. This is the stuff that I think has got a 1 in 10 chance of actually making it, and actually allowing failure. I think that's what we don't do well enough as a culture, is actually celebrate failure. We you know, the guy that failed, everyone, ooh, him. You know, no one talked to him anymore. His career's finished. And it's crazy, because that's how you learn. I mean, there's things that you can do to improve your chances of success, but I would really, really encourage that within the cultural fabric of whatever organisation you're in.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, I was going to pitch my high level, but I've done that already, the big speech. So let me just stick with this theme, because I do this in the public sector in particular, that I consciously, in every organisation I run, I tell people that we need to do proper risk-based assessment, but you learn so much more from failure than you learn from success. In my view, a lot of the time you don't actually know why you succeeded. You succeeded and you're pretty happy you did, but boy, do you know why you failed. And if you don't, there are a lot of people there to tell you. There's always good advice on that. So, and I say that consciously within the organisation to try and lift the possibility that, I mean, not everybody's going to be an innovator, not everybody's going to be a change agent, but if 10% of the place decides that they're prepared to be a bit more proactive as public servants, you know, be a bit more, you know, progressive and take a chance. I'm trying to say I'm prepared to back that level of attitude. And if there's one thing that does, I don't know whether some people in the room will have seen it, but Glenn Stevens did a speech last year where he was, I think, in part trying to explain why, regardless of the state of our economy viewed internationally, why the place, you know, isn't it doesn't have a positive frame of mind. And here's this glass half full, glass half empty speech that people probably remember. And the thing, it's an important thematic for us, if you're talking about this room and people associated with it, that we seem as a country to be a little less, you know, confident and certainly a bit more risk averse, and you know, that's a problem for all of us, and we're all a little bit responsible for that. That we seem to have gone into safety and the glass is half empty sort of mode, and that needs to be worked away at. That there are good things, better things in this show than seem to get attention, and I know good news doesn't make newspapers, but we can all work a bit harder on that.
Thank you. Brad, Peter and Roy, on behalf of this room, certainly the broader ACCI community, and in fact I would have to go as far as our country, thank you for bring your big brains here and being out in front of us this morning. Thank you very much.